we will definitely not shut up and dribble.
The champ is here. I must be the greatest. The champ is here.
I'm going to continue to stand with the people.
The champ is here.
I will not lose.
I'm a bad man. I shook up the world.
Yes, welcome. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you are here with we. My name is EJ, and I got my man,
MH.
Is the DB of the show, and we are Black in Sports, giving a voice to the culture that won't shut up and dribble. Here, interviewing the best professionals in the game and in the boardroom, covering it all, laughing at it all, while providing a platform to be heard. So you know what we like to do around this time, and we got to welcome our guest. All right, so we had to make the call because he's known as the man in the center of NIL. All right, so he's a consultant, speaker, Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated, sports attorney, and founder and president of Anomaly Sports Group. Let's please clap it up for our guest, Luke Fedlam, man. Welcome to the pod, man. We appreciate you taking the time, a little bit later on that East Coast. So we appreciate you staying up for us, man. But how we like to start the show is with a shoot your shot moment, okay? So this is where you kind of tell us the time you went for it all, make or break. You could have won, you lost, fumbled the ball. It could have been with the ladies. It could have been back in your playing days, whenever, but just a shoot your shot moment. Go.
My shoot my shot moment. Wow. You know what? I'll be honest with you. My shoot my shot moment, it was to do what I'm doing right now. Okay. So I was an attorney. I was practicing at a firm, working with athletes, doing mergers and acquisitions work. I got recruited to a company to go in-house, Scott's Miracle Grow. I was doing, mergers and acquisitions work there, buying companies basically around the world, which was cool. But who really gets that into like dirt and fertilizer? I mean, great company, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't really feeding my soul. And so what I did was I came up with a plan, and I wanted to go to a large law firm where I could do the two types of work I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to work with athletes as their lawyer, but I also wanted to be able to focus on educating athletes and groups of athletes. So I have my company, Anomaly Sports. So I was pitching to a law firm, an old, predominantly white law firm. And when I say old, I mean, this firm's been around for like 180 years. We're not talking about like 30 or 40 years. Like, this firm's been around forever. Okay. And I came in and I shot my shot. That's kind of a weird, tense of verb type of thing, but you get my point. I shot my shot with these guys. I sat down in front of the entire executive committee and pitched them on why they needed to hire me to be able to lead, to basically start and lead their sports practice, and for them to be a partner with me in my business. And here I am 5 years later. Guess I made that shot, baby.
The power of sports. So Luke, man, where did your love for sports start?
Well, my love for sports just generally started. I grew up in upstate New York, about 2 hours from the city. For me, it was all basketball. I love basketball. Big East basketball was my thing. I didn't care, about football. I really wasn't into football, but college basketball, the Big East, we're talking about the old Syracuse teams, the Georgetown teams, St. John's. They would battle. And then I'm a diehard Knicks fan back when the NBA was the NBA and they would play. And my Knicks, we didn't win any championships, but my Knicks would fight anybody, and they held it down. So, at the end of the day, I fell in love with sports early on. I love playing, love watching sports. And, I never thought I was going to have a career in sports, but here we are.
So I got to stop a little bit on the Knicks, man, as a fellow
here
Knicks
we go.
fan.
I'm gonna come back when y'all finish.
Yeah, take a break, EJ. Have a drink.
Where do you think we're at right now, man? The season last year was a good little piece of a foundation for the new regime. Kind of struggling a little bit this year, but what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think if we stay healthy, we're going to be all right. We'll get into the playoffs. The East ain't that hard. We got to stay healthy, though. If we stay healthy, I think we could be a 4 or 5 seed. I'm not worried about that. And I think we could, knock on wood, man, I think we could win a freaking playoff series for the first time in 18 years or whatever it's been. So this that year. We're not going to win it all. I'm not a crazy Knicks fan, but I think we could win a playoff series. And that, just something to build on.
I like it. And I mean, it's always a good place to break historical records, right? So I mean, You know, you guys are in the record books
Yeah,
for
chill
being
out.
where.
I know. Come on, EJ. Dang.
Yeah.
Dang, I'm your guest, bro. I just got on, man. Give me
Yeah.
give me a couple minutes of leeway.
I
watch
live
out.
this with MH. MH is a Knicks fan, so he rides with you on that, man. What else you got, MH?
So you did a little running and track, right? If I saw it correct, man, and some cross country stuff. So I don't know anything about the cross country, but we always like to talk about the track, man. So how was track and what was your events?
Yeah, so I ran the 400 and the 800, mostly the 800, and I think the 800 is the hardest racing track. Period.
I might be with you. I ran the 400 and 800 in high school along with the 200, but I think that 800 was a beast. It's like a sprint for 2 laps. All right, good.
Thank you. You get it. You already know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was your time? Give me some times in the 800.
Dang. So in the 800, I was 155. And in the 400, I was like low 49s.
So that was what you ran in college too?
Nah, so in college, I only ran for a year. So like those were my 2 PRs, but I realized real quick. So I was getting recruited to run track to different schools. I got an academic scholarship to Wake Forest where I went. But I still wanted to run. So I ran and I'm like, these dudes real fast. They like fast.
For real fast.
Like, yo, like I kind of want to do some other things. I mean, doing, waking up, having early morning practice. You out there, you trying to hang out and kick it at night with your friends because you in college and like this is a whole new world. But then you got to get up and run, 16 400s the next morning at 5 o'clock. Yeah, I was like, I'm not good enough for all of that to be sacrificing so much. So I left running, man. I left that for the pros to do their thing, so that I could go do some other things in school.
Well, it seems like you still run for fun. I mean, in your social, man, you're out there. Every city you go to, you like to, kind of get out there and get a run, man. Is it something that's still maybe more of a joy now that it's not forced, or is it something that's come like therapeutic, right? Because you hear a lot of runners just talking about getting out, especially after this pandemic, just getting out, being in that nature, clearing your head with a busy guy such as yourself.
First of all, let me give y'all kudos, man. Y'all do your research. That's what I'm talking about. Like, my man knows that I run for fun. I'm like looking around like you got me bugged. Like, how you all over me like that? But yes, I do. I like to run for fun. And for me, it's more so I travel a lot, and it's a way for me to just kind of settle myself. You get off the plane. When you're traveling a lot, you don't eat as healthy as you should. So it's just a great way to get out, see new cities. I like to feel the vibe of a city. Like I always talk about, I like the smell of different cities. And I'm not saying they're like good smells. I'm just like, I like to smell the city, see what it's sitting for. I like to like hear the sounds and see the sights. And you see things differently when you're running through the city as opposed to just, taking an Uber or whatever through the city. So yeah, I do that. And I do it, because it does settle me like, but it's interesting. Like I don't just run for like fun these days. Like it's not like fun for me to run. I run because I'm like, I'm getting older and I'm putting these LBs on. Like I need to do these. I need to do some cardio here. So I need to run a little bit. But yeah, I do still run. I bike. Up until recently, play basketball. I think I might be hanging my kicks up. We'll see.
Don't do it.
I know. We'll see. I'm getting older, man. These pains are getting a little bit more sharp.
The knees, right?
The jumper never goes away.
Yo, you ain't lying. The jumper never goes away, and the jumper is most definitely still there, for sure. But my back and my knees just might not be where my jumper is right now.
So let me ask you this: as a college basketball fan and grew up as a Big East fan, you know how the conferences have changed over, and now Syracuse, as you mentioned, is an ACC opponent to Wake Forest. How do you feel about the way that the conferences have switched over and some legitimate rivalries that are maybe not as big as they used to be?
I hate it, man. I miss it. We all this nostalgia thing, right? Every generation has its nostalgia, like its thing that was like, no, this was the best it could have ever been, and we miss it. And so if you or your listeners, your viewers, if you haven't seen it, there was a documentary. I can't remember. It wasn't 30 for 30, but it was something along those lines, maybe by NBA TV or a different sports channel. But it was called Requiem for the Big East. And if you're like a fan of basketball, you should check it out because it really goes into like Big East basketball from the 80s and 90s, how it helped put ESPN on the map, right, for airing college basketball on a regular basis. But it talks about how football blew it up, how football blew up the Big East because of the football dollars and the money that follows kind of football, and why schools make these changes, right? Like Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC is not because of any sport other than football.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like when you think about like the rivalries that exist within, you know, the Big 12 and all that kind of stuff, like it all changes because of football. So I dislike that. I miss seeing, you know, Georgetown and Syracuse, and I miss seeing all these schools go after it, right? I mean, think about it. Ohio State and Michigan have been playing each other in football for whatever it is, 100 years. There's such history there. I mean, I hate when you erase that just because, you know, you want to try to go make some more money somewhere else.
Absolutely. So being, you know, a New York guy and then going to Wake Forest, how did you end up at Ohio State to get your law degree? How did that choice come up?
Yeah, man. You know, when you decide to get married, you know, we often make these decisions. You know, we don't make these decisions that are just for ourselves, right? You know, when two become one, you make these decisions that are good for the whole. And so I grew up in New York. I went to school at Wake Forest, and I've lived in Philly, DC, and Miami.
Okay.
And decided to go to Ohio State for law school. My wife, after she got her MBA, she started working at Abercrombie & Fitch, which is headquartered here in Columbus. Columbus has a huge kind of retail scene with Abercrombie, Victoria's Secret, DSW, L Brands, The Limited, all that stuff. So so she came here, and for me, you know, with law school, it's like, well, you know, if I'm going to be here in Columbus, I'm going to go to Ohio State. So came to Ohio State. And I'll be honest with you, I really have fallen in love with the city. You know, been here for a number of years now, and it really is an easy city with a lot going on. You know, my good friend Bruce Wimbish is the ambassador when it comes to Columbus. So I'm not on that level yet, but I love Columbus. My kids love it. You know, we've got 2 kids now, and so just you know, being here in the city, it's a great town. And I'll tell you this, especially you don't got to worry about the traffic like, you know, a lot of other cities. And when you land, because I travel a lot, when you land on a plane, knowing that literally as soon as you step off that jet bridge, you're gonna be home in 20 minutes. That's love.
Peace of mind.
So where does Winston-Salem rank for you in cities? I know you said you like to see the feel, the smell of the cities. I've been in Winston-Salem before. So where does that rank in cities for you?
Well, Winston-Salem. Let's just say, you know, Wake Forest was an experience, right? Being on the campus, the university itself, I loved it, right? So my Wake Forest experience, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I love my experience. I love my time. I love my 4 years. But when I was there, I know over the last now, you know, years since I graduated, it's been like, it's changed a lot where the university has engaged with the city more. When I was there, it was much more of a bubble. So you didn't really get into the city a lot, right? You'd, you know, go to church or go here and there, go grab food and stuff like that. But like, so for me, Winston-Salem was never like a city in my life. Like it was like Wake Forest was my university where I went to school.
So you crossed there, right? Is that where you pledged?
No, I pledged in alumni chapter here in Columbus.
Okay. So what was the decision to choose that? You know, that is one of the historic, it's the first, but you know, definitely interesting to find out why people choose, you know, their organizations.
My man said it was the first. That's what I'm talking about. It was the first. So for me, there was no other choice.
Okay.
Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I mean, it's the oldest, boldest, and coldest. It is the first fraternity we got. You like that, EJ, don't you? I see that.
I'm just waiting for you to throw it up, and I didn't know if he's gonna start. You know, you got some space back there.
Hey, I do. But my speaker's not working right now, so I won't be able to hear you if I start stepping over there. But no, you know, honestly, you know, Alpha, especially, you know, here in Columbus, I'm serving as the chapter president, alumni chapter president here in Columbus, and we're just doing great work. I mean, we just served, you know, Thanksgiving dinner to 100 families, you know, this past Thanksgiving, just doing great work in terms of mentoring, developing, and preparing, you know, young Black boys in middle school and high school for success beyond school. And we've got some issues in this city. I mean, Columbus has some issues. We've got some homicide issues. We've got some significant issues that I feel like, Black men need to step up to be able to help address some of those issues. And we can address some of those issues in unique ways that others can't. But we got to put in that work. And so I've always done the work, but to align myself with other brothers who are also trying to do that work, and to like plug in, to tap in with that organization that's doing that work. For me, that's what it's all about.
Man, that's fantastic, man.
You mentioned aligning yourself, and as a former kind of military brat myself, when my mom was in the Air Force and my dad worked civil service for a while. Just talk about the experience that you had with the National Guard, what that's given you in your career.
Yeah. First, thanks to your parents for their service. It was an interesting experience. I always wanted to be in the military. I don't know why. I just always was drawn to this. I think it was the mix of like the uniform, it was the respect, it was the look, right? When I was younger, and then as I got older, it's like, wow, this is, this idea of serving something that's greater than yourself. And, so 9/11. So I graduated 2001. I graduated in May. I started working at an investment firm in Philly in June, July. And then 9/11 happened just a couple months later. And so the firm that I worked at had a big military recruiting kind of program. So a lot of the people I worked with were veterans or were still in the reserves or the National Guard. And when 9/11 happened, it was just that moment where I was like, why am I not serving? Like, why am I not stepping up to say, I want to serve? And what for me, was special about the National Guard was it really was about how do you serve your community? How do you serve locally as well as potentially serve overseas? Now, my biggest regret, and I share this all the time, God works in his own ways. My biggest regret, I was in the National Guard for almost 10 years and never once went overseas for the Guard. I was activated for Hurricane Katrina. So we went down. So my unit, I was an infantry officer. My unit went down about 2 days after the levees broke. So the hurricane hit on a Saturday, the levees broke on Tuesday, and we were down there on Thursday. We were the first non-Louisiana National Guard unit down there. And it was mind blowing. And for me, it really was like, this is why I served. I mean, as an infantry officer, during that time, there was no electricity. There was, it was complete chaos and pandemonium. Like, it was incredible. We did search and rescue missions. We ultimately ended up being security and, kind of supplementing the police force that was down there. But we were down there for about 3 months. And even towards the end of that time, one of the most crazy experiences that I've ever had in the United States of America was they had no electricity. And so there was a bank. We had gotten to this town. There was a suburb of New Orleans, and they wanted to get people cash. They wanted to get people money, but the ATMs didn't work because there's no electricity. And so the bank, we were responsible for protecting a bank, pharmacies, medical centers, like an airstrip, all this kind of stuff. Right. But the bank in particular was like, all right, we're going to open up. We're going to go in. We're going to take out bags of cash. We're going to set up a table outside with these bags of cash. And we need you all to protect us so that people don't steal this cash, so that we can come and people can tell us if they have an account at this bank. We'll take their name, we'll write it down in a ledger, and people can take up to $200 cash. In the United States, like, this was a crazy thing. So for me, that experience was phenomenal. I spent a year in DC doing an ongoing air defense mission in Washington, DC for a year, joint mission with the Air Force, which was phenomenal. Got a chance to, go to the Oval Office, do a lot of different cool things. When our president was president, which was great. And so, yeah, man, I think, my experience in the military, you're like, dang, dude, that's a long answer. But my experience in the military really did teach me a lot about humility. When you think about the Army values, loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, personal courage, all of those things like play a role. All of those attributes play a role in the professional and personal work that I do every single day.
Man, that's fantastic.
That's beautiful. EJ, before you get into the next part, I had to ask this question, right? Okay. So I read an article about your Samsonite briefcase that you wanted, man. I think that is dope. Partly because I always wanted a Samsonite briefcase. but probably for a different reason. Dumb and Dumber was hilarious. So I needed that briefcase. But man, you got that briefcase? You still got it? Well, is it still in the rotation?
It's funny. I don't still have it. It's somehow, somewhere, at some point I was like, this is whack, whatever. And my parents probably threw it away or whatever. Little did I know, 30 years, later or whatever, I'll be like, oh, that briefcase. But what's funny is my best friend, after that article came out, he went and he found a Samsonite briefcase that is very, very similar. He put a nameplate on the inside, a nice little letter, put the magazine that I was on inside of it, and came and gave it to me, man. Just one of the very few gifts that I've gotten in life that actually moved me to tears. Because that briefcase for me, that briefcase symbolized like moving out of my situation. Like it symbolized to me like making it, like success, right? Like the only people I knew that ever carried a briefcase were like people that were successful. Like, so to me, it was like that was the symbol of making it. And so, to then receive it, however many years later, it's pretty cool. Great research. Y'all got I don't know if y'all do your own research, but y'all got a great research staff if you do.
we got a good research staff. It's me and him. So now we want to jump into the career, man, and we're going to, not to glaze over because I think we'll cover it all, but it's definitely some real important stuff, and we're honored to have you on here. But so let's not like glaze over the fact that you're a partner in the chair at your log firm. You know what I mean? And then I'm glad you shared that your shoot your shot moment was actually, coming there and convincing them to start Anomaly, which is the sports benefactor, which, just that's hands claps to you. But before, just give us like how you went from, Miracle Grow to into this field before we get into what we want to really heavily talk about as NIL. But just tell us how you got to that point.
Yeah, so when I was at Scott's, I knew I was leaving the athlete clients that I was working with at the firm prior. And so while I'm at Scott's, I'm doing like acquisitions, like corporate acquisitions, and whatever. It was what it was. It was cool. It was interesting work. I was working with some great law firms from really around the world, because we were doing a lot of international acquisitions. But I still had athletes calling. And I still had athletes wanting to learn different things and wanting to pick my brain, or maybe needing legal services for different things. And I would send them different attorneys. And it really just got to me at one point where I'm like, I miss this, man. I want to be the guy they go to. They're coming to me anyway. Like I want to be back in the mix, answering their questions. And it really is fascinating too. And I know we're going to get into NIL and some other things here in a little bit. But the timing and truly God's timing is everything, because I left Scott's Miracle Grow in 2017 and started here at the firm. And if you think about that timeline, name, image, and likeness really started gaining steam in 2019. So being here in 2017, allowing me to prove myself, right, to the people who said, are we taking a bet on this guy? Like, is this going to, be positive, make a positive impact on the firm? Like, should we do this? So I had kind of a 1.5 to 2 years to kind of start to build this thing out, to say this is going to be something. Anomaly, started to build it out, brought on Bruce to like help, kind of grow Anomaly and spend that focus there. And the reason we brought Bruce on really was because the sports law practice was growing so fast, because I was already in this space and people were happy to hear that I was back in this space, that I didn't have the time to say like, okay, well, I got to call these schools and try to promote what we're doing, or call these pro teams and get in front of them. So Bruce, with, being the freaking mayor and governor and all that he is, right, of knowing everybody, like he was the perfect fit to come into Anomaly to really say, okay, I'm going to supercharge Anomaly and I'm going to go out and get in front of these folks for us. The timing was everything. It gave us time. It gave him time to get comfortable with kind of Anomaly and where we are and what our mission was. It gave me time to get the firm comfortable with what I'm doing, right? Think about this. We're talking about a firm that has about 250 attorneys, give or take. We're in 8 different cities. We only have 4 Black partners. Now, 4 Black partners compared to other firms of similar size, that's not like mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing when I say that number out loud, because it's like, holy crap, it should be more than that. But to then think that they're going to not just bring me on and, I get elevated to partner, which was great, but like also to bring on Bruce, who's a non-lawyer, right? Bruce has his MBA, master's in business, but also master's in sports administration. And to bring him on to help with Anomaly, they made a bet on us. And now, thankfully, they've gotten a return on their investment. And, we're doing well, but they made some bets and it worked off. But I don't ever, ignore the fact that God's timing in all of this was the perfect timing for us to come on and start what we started.
Let's go.
And it's growing fast. So how do you go about, kind of managing the growth of of the firm?
I don't sleep. You see, I'm still in my office on the East Coast. It's after 10 o'clock at night. Come on, bro. I don't sleep. In real talk, it's a lot of work. It's just, here's the thing. I'm going to use an analogy and I think people will probably get this. Like, we're in our harvest, most definitely. We're in our harvest time right now with Anomaly in particular, because of name, image, and likeness. We're getting asked to speak all over the country and work with schools all over the country. We've got 8 or 9 NFL teams that have us come in and get in front of their players. So there's a lot going on. And it's interesting because, a lot of times when we use this analogy, like you plant your seeds and everything, and then you ultimately have a harvest. And people think like the harvest is just when you reap the reward. But if you think about it from an agricultural perspective, in addition to a spiritual perspective, a harvest is not like easy, right? When you think about it, back in the day, people used to bring families from all across the whatever to come and help with the harvest. The harvest time is why kids don't go to school year round, right? Because they need to be able to be available for the harvest, right? In the summertime. The harvest is work. The corn cobs don't remove themselves from the stalk, right? Someone or some machine has to come and do that. And so for us, our harvest time is right now, but it's incredible work. So we're spending a lot of time working in our harvest. Now we're planting new seeds. There are a lot of things that we're doing to prepare ourselves to continue to be needed, right? Because at some point, name, image, and likeness won't be the newest thing to talk about, right? But there are some ancillary aspects of name, image, and likeness, and just what we see in terms of the empowerment movement of student athletes at the college level, and the empowerment of professional athletes, and recognizing this business that they have around them, the fact that they're a CEO of this business, that we're preparing ourselves to be, again, that trusted resource and that go-to resource to be able to help them navigate that.
That's a word. My God. The doors of the church are open.
Right. Wow. Well, let me grab another drink then.
So with that, man, being you said the CEO, right? And when I think of that, man, I really think of just the understanding of the brand and how important is it about, individuals' brand, man. Do you really put that as part of the education that you guys go out and do and talk to people?
Yeah, man, listen, the brand is everything. You already know it, right? Your brand speaks for itself. And it doesn't matter what it is, right? It doesn't matter if you're an athlete. If EJ, MH, your brand speaks for itself. If y'all had a whack brand, nobody's listening. All right. If people didn't trust you, if your brand was something that people couldn't trust, that people couldn't get behind, nobody's tuning in. Nobody's going to listen. I talk about lawyers. I do branding conversations with law students, and different law schools will bring me back to have those conversations, to lawyers that we have here at our firm, especially our associates. Your brand matters. If your brand speaks for itself. If your brand is one that people just can't get behind, then you're gonna have to either change your brand, or you're not gonna overcome kind of what it is you're looking to overcome. So when we think about this for athletes in particular, right now, because of name, image, and likeness, your brand is what allows you to potentially earn compensation outside of your sport. There are stories. There's a, and I know I'm going to misquote this. He's either the 3rd or 4th string quarterback at UCLA who has significant name, image, and likeness deals right now. The LA Times did a great article on him, and it's just because even though he's not the starter, even though he's not getting the playing time, because of his brand and who he is and his engagement, once he gets an opportunity, his engagement, that people want to continue to work with him. He's working with some national brands across the country and making significant money in name, image, and likeness. We know of other athletes who are because of their brand, not just because of their number of followers, but because of their brand that they've created, of who they are, of how they're seen publicly, and whatnot, that have done very well in this space at the college and professional levels. And I think that just that's just a testament to how important your brand actually is.
And I think that's a dope part that a lot of people were really worried about going in, right? Because like, and myself is, not knowing what this was going to be, but you first thought like, oh, all the Alabamas and the big schools and the star people were the ones that were going to really excel at this. And yeah, they have some opportunities that are not afforded, but it's not the only opportunities. And I think even seeing one of the partners that you work with, the Open Doors, shout out to Blake, man, good people over there.
Good people.
But, they said like their social engagement is like the number one thing that people are doing. And then it goes down to like, signing autographs and memorabilia is like down to number 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
So no, that's good facts. What are some of the other things that were surprising to you as you started navigating from the following the law, right, when it was getting written and things like that, to the present day we're at right now?
I think the most surprising thing to me, and I shouldn't have been surprised by this, but the most surprising thing to me was how many people were against it, right? I mean, the NCAA did not just decide one day, like, you know what? We should allow student athletes to get paid. Like, that didn't happen, right? California passed it. And because California passed it, then, the NCAA regulations can't trump state law. So the minute California passed it, the NCAA knew, oh, crap, like we're going to have to deal with this, right? Then obviously Florida kind of jumped the gun, like, hey, we don't care about waiting. We're going to do this thing like next year. And so it, escalated things. But it was surprising to me how many people thought that this was going to be the downfall of college sports. I did a podcast episode where I talked, it was shortly after Name, Image, and Likeness. And I remember just saying like, we're whatever it was at the time, 4 weeks or 6 weeks into NIL, and the world is still spinning on its axis and college sports still exists, right? I mean, it's like, people thought this was going to be the downfall. Like, oh my God, college student athletes get paid. Now, mind you, if they only had the foresight to see that, in the month of November, we were going to have, a college coach get paid a $95 million guaranteed contract to go coach somewhere else, and another one get $100 and whatever million contract guaranteed to go coach somewhere else, right? And these college coaches making, all of this ridiculous money, but yet we have an issue with a student athlete being able to go do $1,000 or $5,000 appearance somewhere. I mean, like, come on, man. So that's something that I think has tripped me out. But what is not lost on me is truly the racial aspects of college sports, right? And that oftentimes we know that, especially in the revenue producing sports, that African Americans, Black student athletes are the predominant athletes in college football and college basketball in terms of numbers. And so it's not, it's just not lost on me that oftentimes there is racial undertones to some of this conversation, that we don't want student athletes to be empowered. We don't want student athletes to get paid. We don't want student athletes to have these opportunities for success, right? We think about, there's so many things that Black student athletes have given up over the years to make college football as lucrative and financially successful as it's been, right? All the things that all the athletes did that ended up tearing up my beloved Big East, right? And ripping it into something that I no longer recognize in the same ways, right? Because of the money in it. But that money came on the backs of so many of our student athletes, on our Black student athletes in particular. So it just really tripped me out, kind of how upset certain people were that college student athletes were going to get paid.
Let me ask you this on that kind of note. I spent some time in Turkey. My dad was stationed there for a little bit, and my little brothers went to high school there for a little bit. But in Turkey and in Europe, and you guys know, and I'm probably gonna butcher it a little bit, but they treat university and what they do for like college completely different. If you're an athlete and you're past high school, you're almost a professional, right?
Yeah.
In a sense, and you're not necessarily tied as a, I guess, student athlete. You're just a professional. You're going to get paid. Do you see maybe not the death of the NCAA and what we know as college athlete, but do you see that separating at all in the future in your line?
So, just like how I talked about when football, like the football led the change in the Big East, right? I keep going back to the Requiem of the Big East. If you have not watched it, you got to watch this thing, right? It was so good. But I think that we're going to see some significant change to the NCAA over the next 3 to 5 years. I don't know that I would call it the death of the NCAA, but when you think about it, here's the thing. The NCAA is just an association. It's just an association of its member institutions. So the NCAA only has the power that the schools themselves give to it. So some people say, the NCAA should just, change its name, become something new, like, become outdated and just call itself now the Association of, American Universities or whatever it is, right? Well, I guess that would make it AAU, which would probably be weird, but whatever. It comes up with something. But the thing is it's all about the power that whatever the association is, whatever power it has. And so when we think about this, it's like, okay, football, I think football has already left the NCAA, right? Football has left the NCAA from the perspective of the NCAA is not responsible for its championships, because that's what the NCAA really is only over, right? It's enforcement of the rules, and then it's championships, right? So it runs the NCAA Final Four, March Madness Final Four for men's and women's. It runs, here in Columbus, we're hosting the volleyball, D1 volleyball championships this weekend, things like that. Like, it runs the championships, but it doesn't run football's championship. That's college football playoff. College football playoff. I know they're struggling right now in their conversation about expansion. They will expand. Whether they do it this year and from the perspective of, I think you have to vote by this year for it to go into effect in 2025, or whether it happens, it's going to happen at some point, because the revenue numbers are, by keeping it at 4 teams in the college football playoff, they drive about $600 million in revenue. Significant. But if you have 12 teams, it drives $2.2 billion in revenue. Now, March Madness, right? The cash cow for the NCAA, March Madness right now brings about $1 billion, right? $1 billion a year. So if you could imagine college football playoff, which is beholden to no one else, right? When the NCAA does March Madness and they bring in $1 billion a year, they still have to fund D2, D3. They give them some, they break them off a little bit, give them some bread. They fund, it goes back to schools and all this kind of stuff. So we know that this college football playoff is going to expand. So at some point they could say, you know what, we're taking on all college football, or at least Power 5 football. And so I think we're going to see some changes there. I think the NCAA has some tough waters ahead. I think the Supreme Court was very clear in their decision in the NCAA versus Alston case. While that case only dealt with a very narrow question, it spoke directly to the NCAA's authority. It spoke very directly to whether or not there was kind of an antitrust exemption held by the NCAA. They said that there's not. So I think what we're going to see is, when student athletes want rights, I think they're going to get them. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what the future looks like. Obviously, there have been conversations about unionization. That's taken on a whole new kind of breath. We saw it in 2015 with Northwestern football team. We're seeing it again now, where the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, their general counsel, right? The NLRB is who decides who can unionize, right? So that the NLRB, their general counsel, their head lawyer, wrote a memo that said, you know what? I think that student athletes are really employees and should be able to unionize as such. Wow, that is a powerful statement. We've seen legislation already introduced about the unionization of college student athletes. So I think we're going to see college sports look very different. Let me take this back. College sports are always going to be college sports. We're always going to see March Madness. We're always going to see games. We're going to see student athletes get on the field, on the court, on the pitch, whatever, and they're going to compete. But the business of college sports, I think, is going to change drastically over the coming years.
Nice. So I've seen you post before, and I don't know if they've changed, but what are your top 5 tips for NIL? For the student athletes, man, that that takeaway, that nuggets that they could have. Top 5.
All right, thank you. Here we go.
Get your pen.
In no particular order. I get it. I'm excited now. In no particular order. 1, you've got to make sure that you don't sign a contract until you know and understand what it says. All right. This is at the pro level. I talk to pro guys about this all the time. That's where they just send it to me like, Luke, what does this say? What does this mean? That's what I do. But the college level, they're still learning whether they should have an attorney or not. Don't sign anything until you understand what it says. Number 2, taxes. I've done multiple calls now with the NFL and their league office talking about name, image, and likeness, because the league is trying to figure out what is this going to look like for our teams when players already come in having made money, potentially having made millions or at least 6 figures, whatever. Like, what is that going to look like? But taxes is a significant issue. And if athletes don't understand, college athletes don't understand the importance of paying their taxes or thinking that they can get by and nobody's going to know, nobody's going to find out. What is that TikTok says something like, there's like that track that's like, they're going to know. No, they're not. They're not going to know, whatever. Like, no, the IRS is going to know. So paying taxes, number 2, critically important. Being able to create a budget, right? Being able to have a budget and a plan for when you make money is going to be important as well. Number 4, make sure that you're authentic to yourself. Be authentic to your brand. Don't allow your social media to just become an infomercial, right, of a timeline. So I've talked to athletes that have been like, man, I'll take $20 for a tweet. And it's like, all right, you got $20, but like your timeline sucks. So you're just hurting yourself because you can't then go on and like, if you have the opportunity where for a significant brand to look at you for a significant deal, they're going to look at your timeline like,
yo, what's that?
You have no engagement because people are looking at it like, I don't want to just hear another ad from this player. Like, I love pistachios. I love, whatever, like this car brand. I like this guy or whatever. So knowing that, I think is number 4. And then I think, the last one that I'll say when it comes to name, image, and likeness, you got to educate yourself. You've got to educate yourself. The 2 words that mean the most to me in the work that I do and in my life are protection and education. Protection and education. I get to protect as a lawyer. I get to educate through my work in Anomaly. But that's my lens through any other decision I make professionally in life. Like, I get asked to be on boards or, different things along those lines. Can I protect? Can I educate? Can I make a difference? Can I make an impact? But you've got to educate. There's a lot of information out there, to where you can learn about the business of name, image, and likeness. And when you can understand the business of name, image, and likeness, you can set yourself up for success for when you leave school, because we know 98% of college student athletes are not going pro. So when you're going on to, decide whether you're going to go to grad school or to take a job offer or whatever, like, educate yourself to prepare you so that name, image, and likeness can just be that conduit or just be that tool that you can use to help you get business style education that's going to help you be successful in life.
Boom. Let's go. Hey, MH, you want to jump into the quick hits, man, just so we can stay on track and get to more of the good stuff?
Yeah, Luke, I just got a quick 4 questions for you to have our listeners learn a little bit more about you. So 1, Tim Duncan or Chris Paul?
Tim Duncan.
Loving basketball or the wood?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Loving basketball.
Okay.
Macking and chilling. Don't get me wrong, I love the wood. But loving basketball. I've watched Loving Basketball more than I've watched the wood.
Okay.
Basketball head, understand.
I love Sanaa Lathan. I mean, listen, stop.
Yeah.
Sanaa, if you're watching,
Hey.
they were running my Twitter. Just hit me. Holla at me. There it is.
All right.
But my wife's from Detroit. My wife's from Detroit, Sanaa, so sorry.
Yeah.
But we can at least say what's up.
We'll say what's up. I got you. A favorite like hobby or something that you like to do by alone?
Go to the movies.
Okay. Biggest pet peeve?
we need to take a minute.
I know. I need to take a breath. My biggest pet peeve are people who try to be more than they are and use words that exceed their vocabulary and their vocabulary ability. I can't stand that. You try to sound smart and you making up words. Nah, I can't get with that.
That's all I have, man. That's funny. I think that's one of my pet peeves too, bro. Stay
Yes,
in your
sir.
lane. Yeah.
So none of y'all like Stephen A. then, huh?
Listen.
All right, so let's get into the winner's circle, and then we may incorporate some other stuff, man. We just wanted to make sure that we get to it all, man. Like I said, it's an honor to have you on, so we want to try to touch as much as we can. So we'll start off with tell us about the podcast, man. You're in this world as well with us. So protect your possibilities, man. How'd that get started, and what was the need for that? What was the vision from that?
Yeah, so really it was COVID that kind of kicked off the podcast. So early on, I just realized I'm not traveling and I'm not talking to as many people in person as I wanted to. And at the beginning part of COVID, we still hadn't really all jumped on Zoom, right? Zoom didn't become this part of our everyday vocabulary, right? So for me, I was just like, how can I get my message out there? And I talked to our marketing team and just said, I really want to do a podcast. And they were like, really? I was like, yeah, let's do. And so they're like, all right, we got your back. So started the podcast. It's called Protecting Your Possibilities. And for me, I mean, y'all go strong. Y'all go 45 minutes and beyond. Like I go 15 to 20 minutes. Even if I have a guest, it's 15 to 20 minutes. Because what I want to do is I just want to talk about issues that affect athletes. There's a lot of crossover for those issues that may affect entrepreneurs and business owners, that kind of thing, just on legal topics, right? Legal topics that people don't really think about. I try to make it easy, try to make it accessible and available for all people. So whether we're talking about real estate, selecting a financial advisor, thinking about business investments, understanding decision-making. I talk a lot about name, image, and likeness, when different issues arise. I think my last episode was on, name, image, and likeness when things go wrong. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, there will be some issues, there as well. So I just try to have a good time, have a quick conversation, and just share some topics with the people.
On your last episode, you talked a little bit about Spencer Rattler, and I don't want to take away from the episode, but you hit an incredible point that even I had questions, which is about what if, the playing time and success on the field goes awry. Now, Spencer now has transferred to South Carolina, and you kind of spelled out how that looked, but give us a couple nuggets that we can share with our guests about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in name, image, and likeness, you can't have a deal that's based on performance. So you can't have a deal that says you've got to play this many snaps, this many touchdowns, we're going to pay you this much money, or you've got to have this much play time, whatever it may be. It's really based on, separate and distinct from your playing time and your performance on the field. So the challenge then becomes, well, what if you have an athlete that is not performing? Right, that just gets benched, that's not out there on the field, not out on the court, and or just is on the court but not performing at the level that they should be. So they're not getting that maybe their draft stock is dropping, whatever it may be. That's where you really got to understand the contract. What outs does the brand have to get out of that contract? What rights does the player have when they're a part of that, a party to that contract? And understanding, it's been fascinating because there have been situations where players, generally speaking, have not performed the way that they were expected to, and brands have recognized that and not held them responsible for promoting their brand in ways that the contract initially called for. There are some real world examples of that, and it's just one of those situations where the brand doesn't want to be in the position where they're out there having a player say, hey, eat at this restaurant or drink this soda or do this the day after a loss, right, when the team is 0-3 and isn't winning, and that player, that quarterback or that star player is getting benched, right? So it's just been fascinating kind of seeing that. But again, that's why it goes back to, it's so important to understand the contract that you are actually signing. And that's the work I do every single day, is to be able to help draft those agreements in a way that contemplates the good, the bad, and the ugly of situations. Because it's easy to draft things when you're just thinking about the good, but you got to think about the bad and the ugly and what happens and how we're going to make sure that everybody's protected and comfortable when things go wrong.
Yeah, fantastic. So you talked about the NLRB and a little bit of associations. I know you guys tapped me a while back and just talking about creating the Basketball Parents Association, man. You want to give us maybe, a quick overview of that and how that's going and where that's going?
Yeah, real quick, the College Basketball Parents Association, it really is about creating a community of parents of college basketball players and, to be honest, parents of high school basketball players. We have a lot of high school basketball parents who have joined. It's free membership. You can go to thecbpa.org, thecbpa.org. It's free to join. There's no cost. There's no hidden costs. We started it because there are so many parents of college basketball players and elite college basketball players. We're not talking about just, an unknown NAIA school somewhere, right? We're talking about some of like players. Our initial year was last year. And I don't remember the exact number, but I think we had as membership and in our leadership 5 guys that were drafted in the first round last year. So those parents who are parents of some of the most elite players in college basketball, they knew nothing about name, image, and likeness because nobody was talking to them about it. They knew nothing about the COVID protocols that schools were taking on because they weren't being educated on it, or the impact, the medical impact of COVID at the time. They didn't know about, understanding like coaches' perspectives and how coaches are thinking about all this. So we decided to say, hey, we're going to bring this community together. So 1, parents at different schools could start talking to each other, and 2, so that we could bring in different, leverage our network to bring in folks to help educate. So we brought in the chief medical officer for the NCAA, and he did a whole session just with our parents on COVID at the time. This was before vaccines and all that kind of stuff. This was December of last year. We did a thing with Craig Robinson, who's Michelle Obama's brother. We've brought him in a couple times to talk to our parents. He's the executive director of the National Association of Basketball Coaches, the NABC. We brought his counterpart on the women's side from the WBCA in to talk to our parents. We've brought in mental health experts to talk to our parents. I mean, so at the end of the day, it's really about providing a resource, because who's responsible to the parents in all of this, right? Obviously, I talked to them about name, image, and likeness, but who's responsible to them? Because the school only really cares about the parents in as much as they're doing the recruiting. Once the recruiting's over, they're just focused on the player, right? Who's on campus. They don't care about the parents as much, right? The NCAA, they don't care about the parents. So at the end of the day, now that's okay. That's a bit extreme. Maybe they care about them, but they're not doing the things to show that they care and to educate and prepare.
No, you said it right the first time.
They eating up their burn ends and leaving. Right, Kelly.
So we stepped in and created the CBPA.
That's dope.
On the way over here, man, to the crib, I was listening to Rick Ross, his new album. He had a little verse on there that said, "You got to learn to use your mind to help keep you out of certain situations." You've been educating for a long time, and you've been doing on the short parts on the pod. How do you go about choosing the topics that you want to talk about? Because you have a breadth of knowledge, and there's layers to the NIL that you even touched on in the show. How do you go about choosing your subjects?
Yeah. So I'm gonna let y'all in on a little secret, just between the 3 of us. You know what I mean? Don't share with nobody. You know what I mean?
And our thousands of listeners. No, not at all.
I know.
Both of ours.
Yeah, right. I literally, a lot of times I will just sit down in front of my microphone like, okay, my deadline is today. I got to record this today so it can get edited and all that stuff. What am I going to talk about today? And I literally think about what are the things that I have just done for clients recently, right? Because every single day I have clients calling about all these different issues. Every single day we're in front of student athletes talking about name, image, and likeness, and we're asking them, they're giving us real-time feedback about things they want to learn more about, things that they want to understand better, ways in which they feel like they're not being developed, right? Because we ask the questions. So, we're asking these questions and gathering this data and all that kind of stuff. And so I just kind of think about those things. And I say, if people want help where I'm providing legal assistance on certain topics, or if student athletes are telling us I want to learn about topics, then I just kind of think about that and say, you know what? I'm going to talk about this today. I'm going to talk about the impact of taxes, or I'm going to talk about how deals might go wrong because, hey, I just, was reading an article about how Spencer Rattler, entered the transfer portal. Like, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how name, image, likeness affects that. So for me, it's always kind of just thinking about what's current, what's real. What have I dealt with recently? What do pro athletes, what are they asking me about? I did an episode on nonprofits, and that's because I've had so many pro athletes tell me I want to start a nonprofit. And my question is always like, why? Right? Let's talk about it. And I don't have time on this episode to unpack it, but we don't need to start it right away. So let's talk about how we can set you up for long-term success. But it's those kind of things where I just have a lot of different calls with clients about things that I'm like, you know what? That's another topic for the podcast.
So is that kind of the genesis of where you got into NFTs, man? Because like that's a definite thing in sports centric. It's blown up, and I would say, and I could be wrong, but NBA was the first one to take off with it for what they did with Top Shop, and like that's where it really started, you know, kind of garnering for me. And then now all these sports from MMA to actual individual athletes are taking off with that. So give us a little bit of the quick and dirty about NFTs, because that's a whole wormhole.
Yeah. So I just started hearing about it more and more. I had a couple clients kind of asking about them. And whenever that happens, I always want to learn myself. Right. So I got on to, you know, NBA Top Shot. I got in on that and was just like, you know what? I kind of got hooked a little bit. Like, you know, so I've got my collection on NBA Top Shot. Kind of same thing with crypto, right? Like, let me just get in so I can understand it so that I can explain it to people. So when we're talking about like how, you know, whatever, Doge did well, you know, up 20%, you know, yesterday or whatever, how, you know, Shiba Inu is doing this or whatever. Like, I know what's going on because now I'm involved. So for me, yeah, it came up, but now because of name, image, and likeness, and because of how NFTs are starting to become more mainstream, I've started to see more and more deals from pro athletes and from college student athletes and NIL doing NFT deals and not understanding how NFT deals should work. You know, I've seen where certain athletes might be taken advantage of because the contract called for the player to get paid on the front end and that's it, and not get a percentage of the future sales. So, okay, college student athlete, you know, somebody pays you $50,000 to do a few NFTs right now and you think that's big money. Yeah, but guess what? You're a college student athlete. You have the chance to go pro. So now all of a sudden you declare for the draft, somebody else resells that NFT, they're making more money off of it. And then you get drafted, and wherever you get drafted, and you get drafted high, boom, somebody else sold it, they make more money off of it. And then you become an all-star or whatever it is, right? Everybody else making money but you, because you didn't understand how the contract worked on the front end to know that you need to be making sure that you're getting a percentage off of every future sale of that NFT. LeBron James doesn't make money when somebody draws a LeBron James NFT from NBA Top Shot because they paid $200 or even they paid $1,000 to get that draw, to get that pack, and they just happen to pull him out that pack. He gets paid when the minute they pull him out the pack and say, I'm reselling it for $250,000. Now he starts getting some money that's of meaning, right? So it's the future sales and understanding how deals work. That's why I do what I do, man, because I want student athletes to be empowered by understanding what they're engaging in.
I love it. And on today is, and I don't want to keep going back to this, but today is National Letter of Signing Day for college football. And there's been some huge news. I guess however you want to call it, huge news with Travis Hunter, and he was a top 2 or top 1, whatever prospect in the country, and he you know changed. He flipped from Florida State University to
Jackson State, the HBCU, baby, with Neon Dion.
Time.
Talk to me about it. Talk to me about that.
I love to see it. I just had a conversation with somebody earlier tonight, right? Because ultimately, I think name, image, and likeness could absolutely have one of the most positive impacts on HBCUs. If I were the president of an HBCU right now, or if I was an athletic director, if I was athletic director, I'd go to the president's office. If I was the president, I'd pull in the athletic director and I'd say, we're going to pull in all of our top alumni, all of our business owners, all of our entertainers, everybody that's whatever. And we're going to say, hey, you can invest in what we're doing by doing name, image, and likeness deals with our student athletes and helping our student athletes to earn compensation. To me, name, image, and likeness is how HBCUs can start to compete with these bigger schools. So now all of a sudden you get a Jackson State that's starting to get some top recruits. And so now, you know, when an Ohio State or a Michigan or a Alabama wants to get a cupcake on their schedule and they pay $1 million, right, to an HBCU to come up and play. You know, Ohio State played FAMU a few years ago, paid them $1 million to come up. You know, I think the score was like 70-3 or whatever. But when you now have name, image, and likeness where these schools are able to start recruiting top talent in football and basketball, I mean, in basketball, I mean, you're really just talking, you get a couple of the top players, yo, you can make a big time difference. And now all of a sudden you're an HBCU that gets into the tournament, and now you make a Cinderella run in the tournament, and you do something where you make it into the Final Four, and you talk about the millions of dollars now that come into the school because of that. I mean, name, image, and likeness to me is that I don't want to call it the great equalizer, but it most definitely is going to have an impact. And I love to see it. That made me, when I saw that, somebody sent me that headline, earlier this morning, I love to see it. I'm excited for Deion. I'm excited for what he did. Wasn't sure what he was going to be like as a coach. Knew he'd be a great recruiter. Wasn't sure what he'd like to, be as a coach, but had a great season. Hey, listen, I wish him all the best. I wish all our HBCUs the best. And I think that there are ways that they can use name, image, and likeness to really change the game.
Love it. All right, so here's where we come to what we like to call the assist, man. This is, even though you've been dropping nuggets the whole day, and like that's part of what you do, right? You protect and educate, right? So you've been educating us. And shout out to our sister Savannah. She's a protector of athletes. So both of y'all had this little protector of athletes kind of thing going on. So we love having sis, and now we got Big Bro on. But right here with dropping the jewels, man, give us a words to live by, something you would tell your younger self, or just a quick quote, man, for the people.
That's a good one. One of the kind of statements that I've always lived by, it was like our motto when I was from my basketball team or track team when I was a kid. It was, from the depths of adversity rise true champions. All right. And I always think about it, like, for me, I've always felt like hard work pays off. Like, hard work pays off. Now, a lot of things have to fall into place. Right. I don't ever consider, I just bought a sweatshirt the other day that says humble over hype. Right. I'd much rather be more humble than be more hype, because I know it's not all me. Obviously I believe, in God and his power in my life. And I've got mentors that have guided me. I've had counselors that have helped counsel me, kind of to where I'm at today. It does take a village, but believe that no matter what situation you're in, like, you can rise, right? And it's all about dreaming big and going after it. Like, I don't have just kind of like one thing. I want to be able to, like, reach through the screen and, like, people who are listening, like, just whatever it is that you want to do, believe in yourself, educate yourself to be the best at it or to understand it, and go do it. When I think about Anomaly and name, image, and likeness, people are like, wow, you hit this right at the right time, and all this kind of stuff. And some people even were like, man, it's like you're like an overnight celebrity and all that. Like, no, it's not overnight. I've been working on this for years. Like, I've been putting in work for years. And the thing is like, I tell this to college students and law students in particular, right? That when people say I want to get into sports law, I'm like, all right, cool. Don't do it just because you want to be a fan, whatever. Do it because you want to make an impact, right? But think about all of the current issues today, and then add your point of view, right? So if you were to just look at college sports, think about all the changes coming to college sports: sports betting, name, image, and likeness, transfer portal changes, esports, right? I mean, the list goes on, right? Conference realignment, right? All this kind of stuff. There's so much to talk about. Yeah. Educate yourself. Be an expert on an area there, right? Like, my son right now, he's all into video games. I try to get him outside to shoot around. He don't want to shoot around. He wants to play Fortnite. All right, buddy, great. Guess what? You're going to learn about the business side of Fortnite. You're going to learn about the business side of these video games and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to expose you to Twitch, so you understand what Twitch is, how people make money off Twitch. I'm going to tell you about, this lawsuit that Apple, has with Fortnite or Epic Games and all this kind of stuff. Like, I want you to understand the picture, the big picture of what's going on, right? So that you can understand it. So that's what I encourage you to do. As a side note, my 7-year-old daughter, yeah, she's hitting on a 10-foot rim. She's my athlete. That's cool. But no, that's what I'd say, man. Just educate yourself and know that you can do everything you put your mind to.
These two, let's go. MH, hit us with the final thoughts.
Luke, man, we appreciate it, man. What I love most about you, man, you're reaching down and grabbing 2 or 3 with you and bringing them up with you, man. So appreciate all that you're doing for us, for the culture, man, and keep up the good work. Thank you for your time, most importantly.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, hey, we definitely want to thank our guests. And we want to thank the man behind our guest. He's over there like hiding out. So we want to give Bruce a little quick shout out. So thank you, Bruce, for getting us, putting this together. So, hey, please, man, Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you grabbed a couple nuggets, man. It's definitely inspiring, and you know, Luke put out all his information. We're going to put all of that stuff in the show notes. So please subscribe, and know we drop a new show every Thursday. Please subscribe to the YouTube because visual representation matters. And please stay safe, practice gratitude, and know we're rooting for you.
Screaming, all us blacks got is sports and entertainment until we even.
Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Yeah. Yeah. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. Spent about 2 racks on handmade new rags. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's black. That's everybody from sports to college class to rap and back.